Where are you coming
Cool.
from? Where
So
have you
this,
been?
sorry,
Where are you coming from? Where have you been?
I'm coming from, I think just feeling relaxed and chill. Yeah, I mean, I woke up half an hour ago, so mind is pretty clear.
And in the clear mind, what do you see?
It just feels like mind is quiet and there's no drive to do anything right now.
That's not what you see, but that's good. That's good enough. Let's keep going. Questions.
Yeah, so this one is, so this is the question I have from the book Dream Conversation. It's page 55. This is pretty radical because I think I have thought about this idea, but
Very nice book on intermediate Zen. Before we get there, can I read something from page 17 from the same book?
yep,
Means
yeah.
and means and ends. People who arrive at the fundamental may subsequently teach any kind of doctrine to people as an expedient, without their own understanding being limited to any such doctrine. The intellectual interpretations of these doctrines made by people who have not arrived at the fundamental, however, are all misconceptions. Thus, people may have received all the verbal teachings of the founders of the spiritual schools without actually being like the founders. So the transmission of the verbal teachings is obviously not in itself the point of the schools. As an ancient commentary on the scripture says, mind itself realizes mind, mind awakens mind. To therefore reject or abandon instruction, however, and just carry on according to how you happen to feel, how you happen to think and feel, is also a wrong idea. Scripture calls this the disease of letting be. Did you get that? It's a very
Yeah.
important point for everybody. So, any kind of doctrine may be used as an expedient. People who uh, use these expedients without having arrived at the fundamental are by definition, well, let me just quote it directly. The intellectual interpretations of these doctrines made by people who have not arrived at the fundamental, however, are all misconceptions. So the intellectual interpretations, he does put the word intellectual before it, of these doctrines made by people who have not arrived at the fundamental, however, are all misconceptions. And then finally, to therefore reject or abandon instructions, however, and just carry on according to how you happen to think or feel, is also a wrong idea, and Scripture calls this the disease of letting be. So it's another form of Zen sickness. Okay, 55. Which
Actually,
part?
I have a question on that you just read.
Okay.
Uh, so I think we talked about it before as well, which was of all the material that I have read through till yet,
Mm-hmm.
almost all of it feels like I read it and then there's like an intellectual learning that happens with it or
Correct.
conceptualization,
Yes.
uh, and then I move ahead with that. So last night when we talked about it, I got an idea that okay, at least that is like only a small part of it, and there's something more that should happen. So now what I do is when I read something, I don't stress too much on understanding it. I kind of just contemplate on it a little bit. And then there's also some kind of feeling like it feels like, okay, I am getting something, but I don't, then I move on from it. But then it still feels like that I'm not getting that non conceptual or the intuitive part from it.
That's true. On the other hand, these are little dots of mercury, and they do fit together. And when the bottom falls out of the bucket, all this will make sense. But It's to prepare the mind and to give you some basic knowledge about your own mind, consciousness itself, the circumstance, and also what other people have found. And so it's all good, but it's important to recognize that intellectual understanding can never be the thing.
Mm-hmm.
All right? And direct
Okay.
perception is what we're after. Direct perception.
Mm-hmm.
There's a book here of people waking up. Transmission of Light. It starts with a Buddha and then it goes through a bunch of saints. A bunch of saints. Let's see, how many saints does it go through? 53 saints, including Dogen. I wonder if Huang Po is on here. No. At any rate, Bodhidharma. Some of it is hagiography, and I'm not recommending the book necessarily. I just want people to know that it's there. 53 enlightenment stories. Because you see all kinds of crazy stuff on YouTube. You might as well see some stuff that from another source and another time. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're clear on that point. Now, what's on page 55?
Yeah, page 55, yes.
What's that?
It's adjustment to the individual.
Okay, may I read it real quick?
Yeah.
Adjustment to the individual. The father of the Buddha was a king. After his son attained Buddhahood and began to attract followers, the king had 500 members of his clan become monks and nuns. Hearing the Buddha tell his followers not to adorn their clothing or dwelling places, one of these monks realized he could not follow the teaching because as a member of a royal clan, he was used to luxury. The Buddha had a senior disciple go to the royal palace and obtain all kinds of finery to decorate a place for this monk and had the monk stay there for the night. Because of his usual cravings for luxury had been fulfilled, the monk's rambling thoughts spontaneously stopped and clarity of knowledge emerged. In the last part of the night, he attained sainthood. The senior disciple was amazed by all this and asked the Buddha about it. The Buddha said, quote, "There are those whose attention to the way is fostered by adorning their clothes and houses. For them, such adornment is an aid to enlightenment. Then again, there are those whose attention to the way is diminished by fancy clothing and furnishing. These people should therefore be aware of such things. Realization of the way and attainments of its fruits depend entirely on the mentality of the practitioner, with no necessary relationship to such things as clothing and dwelling places. So, for certain people, finery should not be prohibited as a hindrance to practice of the way. But when people whose minds are not really on the way of enlightenment use such examples to claim that indulgence in luxury is no hindrance to enlightenment, they are deluded." Very nice. Very, very nice. Thank you. So what's the question?
So with this, so I have contemplated on this before. What I have seen is, if I have a strong desire and when it gets fulfilled, mind goes quiet, and there's no more, and mind is pretty relaxed at that point.
If you have a strong desire and what?
It gets fulfilled.
And it gets fulfilled, okay. The
Then
mind goes quiet.
Mind goes quiet.
Good.
And there's a kind of a lasting peace after that, and it's only when the desires cannot be fulfilled.
I'm kind of scared to ask you for an example, but is there one that you could share that's not?
Yeah, so like long time ago, I had a strong desire because I came from poor family.
Okay.
I had a strong desire to like work in a very like the best job that I wanted to be at that time, and
Okay.
be in the US.
Okay.
And then it happened with the endeavor I was doing at that time. And after that, there was a lasting peace. Even now, that desire, that peace is still there
Good.
because
Good. Yeah. I'm not sure desire is the right word, but fulfill your basic needs, and also to fulfill a dream, and to find something that's meaningful to you, and to achieve that. That's you can call it desire, but it's a long term desire. It's not like you had a desire for some meth, you know,
Mhm.
because that apparently does make people feel good for a while afterwards, as does coke or heroin, or there's all kinds of desires you
Mhm.
could fulfill and still get some peace for a while. But good, all right, good. So that's a good example. So now I'll go back to the question.
Yeah, yeah. So what it seems to me that if if I can fulfill that desire, then it's or the dream, it's best to just do that because then I'll get a lasting peace. Only when I see it's tough or it's gonna take like it's kind of impossible to do that, then I need to employ all these techniques of like calming the mind and like doing all that stuff, uh, which seems like mechanical things to for the mind to not get carried away or get disturbed by those dreams or desires.
I'm not sure I follow. Help me out. You're making a distinction between two kinds of desire,
Yeah. So one, those I see can be fulfilled.
right? With hard work and perseverance and diligence, discipline, all of those
Yeah.
things. Okay, that's fulfilling one kind of desire.
Yeah. And then the other ones that I crave, but then I don't see a path to them. I don't see them being fulfilled or in my control.
Okay, these short-term desires or long-term desires. Help me out here.
So for me, I think that would be again like long-term desire.
Like what? You're
So
anonymous
like
here.
like it's mainly like two, I would say two that I have. One was the life partner thing that I
Okay.
used to wonder about till last year.
All right.
So like that can be an example.
Well, that's harder to just apply hard work, discipline, perseverance, so on and so forth. That requires an element of good fortune to be lucky in love. Okay, so
Mhm.
what's the question?
So it seems that this that is it it's like is it a good strategy to live life to just like if there's something that is achievable, just go for it because even on the journey, mind is quiet, and for other ones that are not in my control.
Is your mind quiet when you're out looking for a long-term partner?
No, because that is not in my control, so that's why there's no quiet. But the other
Okay.
one, like the job thing I had long time ago, there it was quiet because I just knew
Yeah, you
what I
gotta
need
you
to do.
gotta grow up and put your feet on the ground and face the world and do stuff, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
A pauper is
So,
a stranger in his own town, right?
mhm.
So I don't know what is there some virtue in poverty that you feel like you're missing or something? I don't get it. This
No,
is
no, not
common
the
sense.
virtue.
This is common sense. How does this? I'm just wondering how does that relate to page 51 here?
So in this one, the like the Bu- like the disciple of Buddha, he used to feel comfortable, and his mind was at ease with the luxury, with with luxurious stuff.
Yeah, had
So
grown up
he
with it. That's what he was used to. You know.
yeah, so he yeah, so with that, when he would have that, his mind was quiet, then he can focus on other things. Uh,
Right, and he was sincere, obviously, because he woke up.
yeah, yeah.
There are parts of the world where having a car is very, very rare. There are other
Mm-hmm,
parts of the world where having a car is just part of your everyone's life. If you're out in the boonies of parts of the U.S., having a
mm-hmm,
car is normal. So having a car or not having a car is immaterial. The desire to have a car, though, is different in those two people. You see?
mm-hmm,
Now,
mm-hmm.
if somebody wants a car because they want the status and they want everybody to look at them and say, "Hey, look at me, I'm rich," and show their keys, and all that other stuff, which happens quite a bit, actually. I'm told in different parts of the world. That's very, very different than having a car because you need a car to go to the grocery store and you want a car to, drive your kid to the doctor in case something happens. I don't see the question.
No, the question is that if there are some things that I'm uncomfortable without, it's not I want something to show to people. It's something that I feel that I
Yeah,
need
I
or
think
I
you said
lack.
it right here. It has nothing to do with enlightenment, and I appreciate this story because there's so much misconception. For example, people hear about Buddhism and they say, "Oh, well, you can't be attached," but they don't understand what it is you can't be attached to, right?
Mhm.
And so I like this story because the Buddha, being wiser, right, and having more insight, understood that people are different and what they need differs. And asceticism was never got the Buddha that far, right? And so
Mhm.
asceticism per se can be just as much as an obstacle as anything else. People become proud or they become attached to their asceticism. They become attached to being
Mhm.
not attached. And
Mhm.
so the point is these are completely different domains and completely different dimensions. In general, now there are some people that you need to like put a hammer down on because they are completely self-indulgent, right? And if they're sincere, then they'll give that up, and maybe they need some help giving that up, the self-indulgence all the time. But there's other
Mhm.
people who don't have that problem at all. They have other problems. So it all has to be individualized, and that's my point, I guess. Part of the point of this channel is that this is a highly individualized process. And some people could
Mhm.
do it on their own, but it's very, very, very rare, right? And most people require help. But
Mhm.
if you look at history, if you look at, for example, the ninth, 10th, 11th, 12th centuries, for example, there's all kinds of people helping other people to wake up. And they do, lots of them.
Mhm.
But it was a different culture, a different time. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. I think then that brings
Follow
a
up?
follow-up question. Yeah.
Follow up question.
Yeah. So then that brings up what kind of attachment is an obstacle on the way, and what kind of attachment needs to be fulfilled.
Attachments don't need to be fulfilled. Well, I shouldn't say that. Okay, the fact that you asked that question makes me worried that there's an attachment that you should be worried about, or desires that you should be worried about because they would be an obstacle. Because these things don't come up as, there's like, well, let's say someone needs to give up bread for a diet. If somebody asks, am I going to have to give up bread for my diet? Then the chances are that there's someone who's attached to bread, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to introspect yourself, right? You have to do some of this stuff yourself. If you find your mind is preoccupied with something all the time, and it's just going around in circles, and you're not unable to do anything to to either fulfill or to put to the side an overweening desire, then you might ask yourself, is this really necessary? Right?
Mm-hmm.
But with regards to many things that people, because they're because they're rigid, because they're not fluid, because they're haven't studied the Tao or they haven't studied Buddhism properly, they just go by the cartoon version. They start doing these hardcore austerities, and many of the people are already inclined that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they're not really making any progress in growth. They're just fulfilling their own rigid, narrow, sometimes biting and obsessive natures, and their desire to deprive themselves and have everybody appreciate how self-depriving they are. But that's an ego
Mm-hmm.
thing. So you got to ask yourself: is this something that's building my ego, or is this something that is not even related to my ego? So that'd be
Mm-hmm.
another test, right? But again, this is for grown-ups, and grown-ups have to be able to look at their own mind and say, "Hey, is this getting in my way?" And be honest about it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you saw this in the old days, back in the 20th century. There were enlightened masters who were smokers,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody, in the later second half of the 20th century, all the hippies went, "Ah, how can you be enlightened and smoke?" Well, it has nothing to do with each other.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not advising smoking. That was a kind of a stupid thing, but it has nothing to do with enlightenment.
Mm-hmm.
So each man must search his own heart. Each woman must search her own heart and find what it is that's there because it's for the ego or for the preservation of a fixated personality, and what's there
Mm-hmm.
because what's immaterial to that.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Uh,
I mean, it's like women.
so
It's
like,
like women who go. I can't tell you how many of these are. Back in the day, this is hilarious. I remember this because it was so obvious. Women trying to control their weight. I don't know any men who were as concerned about it back in the. I'll date it. I think it was back in the 70s. They would go on fasts for merit. So they would say that I'm doing this to obtain Buddha merit. This was very primitive Buddhism back then. We didn't know a thing, right? They would say, well, I'm going to fast to obtain merit for my quest for enlightenment. But what they were really doing was dieting, you know, and you don't get paid twice. Or they'd
mm-hmm.
dye their hair, or they'd shave their head, or they'd put some tattoo on and saying, I'm doing this for the Buddha or whatever. And so you'll see it, right? The hard thing is seeing it in yourself. And those are the kinds of questions you need to ask yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be tricky because the ego is a slippery son of a gun.
Mm-hmm. So
It's like
like
people
when it,
charity, where people giving charity, but what they really want is to be acknowledged for their charity. That's not charity. That's buying people's opinion, or so you think.
mm-hmm.
I remember in church when the person they passed the basket and somebody to get out their wallet, right, and pull out the 20 or whatever it was back
Mm-hmm.
then. Okay, does that help?
Yeah, that helps. So like for example, like some time ago, a thought came up that oh yeah, let's make like $100 million or something, and
Okay.
then with that, there was a drive to do that, and then when it was taking too much time, I realized, okay, let's balance it out. So now what I do is I do like some effort, like the usual stuff,
Mm-hmm.
to progress on that, but I don't spend too much time on it. But still, when I think about that, it feels good, like that idea of having that, right?
Okay.
Uh,
What's the
so so
question?
so the question is there some more tweaking that needs to be done, or is it good enough that as long as things don't like bother me, that they're taking too much time or too less time, if I don't think about it and just do them, is that good enough?
If you could make an honest $100 million by investment or just putting your money in the right spot at the right time with the right people who are doing something decent for humanity,
Mm-hmm.
I don't see. Let me know who you. No, I'm joking. No, of course not. That's fine as long as it's not eating you up, right? It's an investment, I presume. Now, if you're going to go out and
Mm-hmm.
do the startup, then yeah, that's going to delay things. But if you're just making an investment and you know how to do it, right? And it's for
Mm-hmm.
the good. Like let's say you're building solar panels or you're building research labs, or you're doing something that's going to benefit humanity. It's going to increase the wealth of everybody. Then yeah, that's a
Mm-hmm.
good thing. There's merit in that. If it's something that's really going to lift everybody's boat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you see what I'm saying? And there's nothing wrong with achievement in the world towards the aim of making this world safer or healthier or cleaner. That's good. And if you could raise capital and then you deploy that capital again, because what are you going to do with 100 million? You're going to have to put it somewhere. So you deploy it in something else. But this is what's meant by in the Eightfold Path, right livelihood. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't say no livelihood. It says right livelihood. Now
Mm-hmm.
that's way out of my league, right? But some people deal with millions the way other people deal with thousands, and
Mm-hmm.
some people deal with tens of millions the way other people deal with hundreds. Like me. Okay, so no, I say it depends. It all depends. Okay.
Okay, got it. Then I have another question. This is from page 53, just
All right.
like one paragraph. The first,
Dream
the
Conversations on Zen and Buddhism. Okay, 53.
uh, the first paragraph on this page.
Well, we gotta have to have the intro paragraph because it starts with it was to help
Okay.
people like this. So let me just read it real quick.
Mhm.
The origins of koan practice. The ancient Zen teachers did not tell students to take up their words as koans. They did not tell students to wonder at their words or not wonder at them. Eventually, however, shallow people used to figure out the sayings of teachers intellectually and considered that enlightenment. Those who could not figure them out got bored and quit. It was to help people like this that Chinese Zen masters from the 11th century onward established the expedient of a device of calling a koan to mind without conceptualization. Even later on, for those unable to focus intense wonder on the koans, further methods were employed to foster the appropriate mood of inquiry. Absolutely true. And that's what this book is about right here. But this is advanced, right?
Mhm.
So this is a book of how to use koan, how koans were used, misused. You know, you have pretenders, you have fakes, you have genuine articles, you have sincere seekers that really want to understand, and you have people that are just hanging on or want the prestige of being a Buddhist monk. Back then, it was different. There was a state institution, there were hermitages, and even before that, there were Confucian and Taoist civil service exams. So it was a different time.
Mhm.
And so that's just by way of introduction. What's your question?
Yeah, so sometimes I read a story, like even in the Sufi books or even like Zen Koan, and I don't get it, but there's a small period when the mind is stopped. Is that enough yield for me to move on from them, or is that the purpose of those, or do I need to concentrate
We
more on
can't
it?
generalize. There's such a huge range. The one that I gave you,
Yeah,
where the he's asked where's your boat, and he
yeah,
says it's under my
yeah,
feet.
yeah.
I mean, the thing is, the reason these are used is because historically people wake up with these koans. If a koan hits you at the right time or a Sufi story hits you the right way, it can wake you up quite a bit, or it can wake you up all the way. That's why these things are so important for humanity not to lose. Now, does it take some sincerity on the part of the student? Absolutely. Does it take time?
Mhm.
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And when you read these stories, for example, that's one of the reasons why why Zen is so interesting, because they don't mess around with anything. They just want to go straight to direct perception. And so some of these koans they're like getting hit on the head. Pow! It's the same thing. And some of
Mhm.
them will like hit your ego in such a way that the ego's knees buckle and the thing crashes to the ground, the bucket falls out, and the next thing you know, boom, you're awake.
Mhm.
So that's one possibility. Another one is that you do it piecemeal, right? And so I can't generalize because there's such a huge range of these things.
Mhm. Okay, got it.
It's like saying,
Um,
are paintings good for learning about the anatomy of the human body? Well, some
mhm.
are, but others will take you in the wrong direction, right?
Mhm.
And some are
Yeah.
totally unrelated to that and weren't intended for that.
Mhm.
And learning to tell the difference, that's the job of the teacher. That's not the student's job. The teacher's job is to provide materials that the student can find useful at that time if they're
Mhm.
sincere, right?
Mhm.
So you don't have to worry about it. Just do your best.
Okay, got it.
And if
Got
you
it.
have questions about a particular one, ask so you can learn a pattern of how to approach things.
Okay, okay.
All right? And others aren't
Mhm.
particularly koans. Like, for example, at the end of this thing, it's so gorgeous. I keep going back to it right here. The national teacher of Guilang replying to the imperial crown prince about the essentials of mind. So now what is this? Mind, Buddha, and living beings are as a whole ultimately equal. We know that when they are deluded, people follow things. And since things have myriad differences, people are not the same. Myriad, by the way, just means lots of different ones. Myriad, like a multitude. Okay, so mind, Buddha, and living beings are as a whole ultimately equal. So we know that when they are deluded, people follow things. And since things have myriad differences, people are not the same. But when people are enlightened, things follow people. Everyone has one wisdom that clarifies the myriad objects. When words are exhausted and thought is ended, what is effect? What is cause? The essence is fundamentally silent. What is the same? What is different? And this is the part I love. Just forget what's on your mind, be empty and clear, and your comings and goings will be peaceful and harmonious, like moonbeams penetrating water, immaterial yet visible, unmindingly mirroring images, reflective yet always empty. One more time. Just forget what's on your mind, be empty and clear, and your comings and goings will be peaceful and harmonious, like moonbeams penetrating water, immaterial yet visible, unmindingly mirroring images, reflective yet always empty. So you ever seen the moon on the surface or penetrating a lake or a swimming pool?
Mm-hmm.
So that image of being like that, there but not there, open and free, reflective, luminous. So is that a koan or is that a poem, a beautiful simile?
Mm-hmm.
Depending on how it's used. Now later someone might say, you're out there, looking for moonbeams in a sand dune or something. And so that might not make any sense to someone who wasn't familiar with this content. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
There was another beautiful one about seals in mud. Waves of mud. As a thought being like waves of mud. But go ahead, what was your question?
I think my question on this one was, I think my question was mainly do I need to do anything more or just like let it be and then with time
What's the koan?
learning will come.
What's the koan? What's the joke? What's the story that you're asking about?
So like sometimes I will read like Mullah Nasruddin jokes.
Yeah,
And
but
I will
which
not
one? You see, those who know do not generalize. And so pull one out that you think's a problem, and I'll give you my best take on it, right? But see, you're generalizing, and you're looking for these rules. And what did we start with? We started with this thing about it saying the rules are not like, it's not like that. It's fluid. The conditioned mind is infinite. Think about it.
Mm-hmm.
The conditioned mind is infinite.
Mm-hmm.
Now, reality is more than infinite, obviously, but the conditioned mind goes on and on forever. You can go down some rabbit hole. You can go down rabbit holes forever. You can find squirrely little funnel clouds of weird thoughts, ideas, premises, and things like that. They're all over the world. So you get lost out there.
Mm-hmm.
So without specifics, what can I say,
Oh, okay, then I think the question is not valid anymore because
Good.
I was looking for a
And that class of questions is not valid.
Mm-hmm.
Now, just while I'm thinking about it, so koans were used also to test students to see what their level, like what I do when I ask, where have you been, or what have you been doing, or where are you coming from? But they're also used to test teachers, and that was a very vital function,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So in this book, they talk about because you can't just go by external appearances, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the book is not important in any way except that it shows a period of time, 200, 300 years in which we struggle with the exact same problems that we have now. Just different time, different place, different metaphors, slightly different tech. But humans haven't changed.
Mm-hmm.
including bogus teachers, bogus students, people doing it for the wrong reasons, people pretending to do it. All those problems all exist.
Mm-hmm.
The problem today is nobody cares. But they will. With the AIs, they're going to start realizing that we need meaning. And our meaning as humans is to explore the foundational awareness out of which we arise, and to learn to use it, to lean on it, to realize its creative capacity. And so as the AI start to eat up all of the things that our brains can do easily, like think, and to assimilate materials, written materials or mathematical materials or whatever, then humans are going to be searching for purpose. And this is the purpose of human life, as far as I can tell. Okay? Another question? Forgive me for getting
Yeah. Yeah, I
pedantic.
have just, I think, one last question. So, I think a couple of years ago, I kind of decided that I will only read books of enlightened teachers, so like Sufi books or Thomas Cleary and those things. And with that, I basically started discarding anything else. Like I stopped reading any other book on philosophy or anything like that. Uh, and I and I read this passage from this book from Tim Conversation on material. It's like page 50, the last paragraph.
All right, well, there's 3 little paragraphs. Let me read them, okay? Just for the sake of people that are listening in.
Yeah, yeah.
Koans. Sometimes Zen teachers give students koans to look at. Sometimes they take koans away
Sorry.
and have students abandon them. It is all a matter of method, not to be standardized. All right, what you wanted to stop me?
Yeah, it's page 50, the one before, the wonder.
All right, but still, this thing on koans is really nice, so if you don't mind.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure.
When you become one with a koan, there is no one bringing up the koan and no koan being brought up. When you reach this stage, how can there be any dualism of giving and taking, using and not using? Yeah, how could you, like using or not using, the idea of the ship underneath your feet? How could you use or not? I mean, the question goes away. Giving and taking away are methods temporarily used by teachers for students who have not yet reached this state. They cannot be judged by ordinary feelings. When people without enlightenment formulate literalistic interpretations of Zen koans and hand on fixed doctrines to students, that is a big mistake. Such people were criticized by ancient masters for binding people with dogma. And we see this all the time in the contemporary Zendos in the West and the Zen centers. And we saw this in the 70s and the 80s, and it used to tear Clary up that people would take books that he had translated and then use them inappropriately to pretend that they understood and to manipulate and control other people and to increase their enrollment in their Zendo or their Zen center. So it's a real problem. And so thank you for that. Now you wanted to go page 50.
Yeah, page 50,
Wonder,
last paragraph.
wonder or judging the words of adepts.
Wonder, the last paragraph.
Zen teachers may speak of wondering about Zen koans, or they may speak of not wondering about them. There is no fixed track for Zen teachers to follow. That is absolutely essential. There is no fixed track for Zen teachers to follow. Sometimes Zen teachers tell students to look at koans questioningly. Sometimes they tell them not to doubt. In every case, a teacher is dealing directly with a student, not speaking in generalities. That's key. If someone's teaching you in generalities, you're not being taught. In general. Speaking generally. I mean, I just made an absolute statement. I cracked myself up. Okay. Zen teachings are not doctrines kept in mind by the teachers. They are produced spontaneously at the interface between teacher and student, which is what's happening now. One should not try to freeze momentary teachings into fixed theories. If Zen teachers are enlightened, their teachings may effectively take any form. If they are not enlightened, whatever form their teachings may take, it will actually blind their students. That's absolutely true. They hurt people. They don't just, it's not neutral. So, okay. If Zen teachers are enlightened, their teachings may effectively take any form. If they are not enlightened, whatever form their teaching may take, it will actually blind their students. Very true. Not something people want to talk about. But go ahead. What were your questions about that?
Yeah, so like I thought, on the same lines, I decided to stop reading any material from other people just right now because I have books
On
from
what
Sufis,
subject? On what subjects? You said philosophy. Fair enough.
philosophy, or spiritual material.
Yeah. Why would you read garbage when you can read the real thing?
Yeah, but then I hear from other people telling me that I am close-minded. I'm not open to reading these,
Open to reading what?
like open to reading other people's interpretation. And I'm
Like
like, if they
whom?
are not
Whom?
enlightened,
Whom? Are they talking about other enlightened masters? Or are they talking
not
about
enlightened masters,
some guy who's selling books?
some guy who's selling books, yeah.
Well, then what the kind of, yeah, if you want to waste your time and blind yourself with idiocy, just read somebody who's trying to sell a book, not trying to teach, but trying to sell books. That's a very different enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know who you're talking about, so I'm at a big disadvantage. It could be somebody that is an enlightened master and you just can't tell yet. But more likely, since there's a lot more unenlightened people posing as enlightened people, especially selling books, then, but I don't know who you're talking about, so I really can't say.
Mm-hmm. So like one example was this. So there's Jiddu Krishnamurti, but there's also UG Krishnamurti. So I don't read
Okay,
UG
Jiddu
Krishnamurti.
Krishnamurti is enlightened and he's legitimate. The other Krishnamurti is a fake, obviously. There's also a fake Shah. Shah's brother, Omar, I mean, was used to divert students who weren't serious from Idris's enterprises. They worked together and they took the clowns off to one side and the serious students went the other way. Right? So with regard to that, if you ask me, I can tell you, I've been down those roads. I'm an old man. I've seen a lot of stuff, and it's particularly things like masters out there, because you can tell in a heartbeat, or you can tell over hours and just listen to them a little bit. In the case of so see if you disagree. If you're really hard on that, who else? Although probably we shouldn't go down this road. But don't ask me to generalize beyond a certain point.
Okay.
But you cannot distinguish, I know because I've been down there, you can't distinguish an enlightened from an unenlightened teacher until you've woken up. Otherwise they sound very similar, but they're not. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense.
Later it'll be blazingly obvious. All right?
Okay.
Those who know do not generalize. Those who generalize do not know. To a point. Okay?
Okay, yeah.
One more before we stop?
No, that was pretty much what I
All right, sir. Take good care. Guard your mind out there. And if you can make $100 million and do it honestly and do it in such a manner that it helps others and doesn't take from them, more power to you. And we need more people stepping up to the plate, realizing this is not a zero-sum game. We can all build our wealth, our security, everything, if we set our minds to it. And we need to do that, because otherwise we're going to destroy ourselves. So make it good. All right. Ciao.
Cool. Thank you.